Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and a huge welcome wherever you are around the world. And welcome to today's Postgrad Insights, which will focus on something unique, actually, studying Canada. This will be the first webinar that we have focusing on the great country of Canada and the different law schools that are there. So today's session will be sponsored by Osgoode Hall Law School, based in York, actually not too far away from the United States, which many of you have been tuning into over the last few weeks about studying at and living in and the benefits. So this will be a fantastic session. Just a reminder that anybody watching on social media or on demand won't be able to send in questions via the Zoom facility. So if there are mentions to that, please don't do that. If you're doing it on social media, please message us. If you're watching on demand, please send us an email with my contact details at the end of this session. There will be a Q&A at the very end of the presentation. So if anyone has any questions, please do put it in the chat facility or in the Q&A at the top of your bottom of your screen, depending on what device you are on. But without hanging around too much longer, I'd like to hand you over to Meghan Thomas. Meghan is the Director and Professional Graduate of International Programs at Law School, at Osgoode Law School. Meghan, over to you. I know you're going to be presenting for the next 30 minutes, and we will see you for the Q&A at the end.
Great. Thank you so much, Gareth. And it's really wonderful to be with all of you today. I'm just going to take a moment to pull up my slides. Okay. So I'm delighted to be with you today, and it's a real pleasure to be the first Canadian law school presenting to you. I know some of you may have been participating in webinars about US law schools. And if you have, as I go through the presentation, you'll notice that there are some significant differences in terms of the legal landscape in Canada. I'm glad that all of you are interested in finding out more. So I'm going to be talking about a number of different options that we have here at Osgoode Professional Development for studying law in Canada, both short programs and longer programs, and programs that are intended to help you achieve different goals. And by way of introduction, as Gareth said, I'm the Director of Professional Graduate and International Programs here at Osgoode PD, which is part of Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto. And for those of you who are able to see my lovely photo background, this is what our campus looks like today, actually. It's fall, it's beautiful outside, it's sunny, and the leaves are turning color. So we're experiencing the gloriousness of all of our changing seasons here in Toronto. And actually tomorrow evening, we're going to be having a Harvest Thanksgiving event with our current students to mark the changing of the seasons. So I'm hoping that many of you are thinking about joining us in future years. Okay, so I'm going to start out with, I'm going to go from sort of broad to specific. And in terms of stage setting, again, I know that some of you are looking at different jurisdictions as options for studying abroad and looking at furthering your legal knowledge. So why would you think about Canada as compared with other options? Well, we continue to be very fortunate here in Canada that we're rated highly on quality of life, on safety. We are a country that welcomes newcomers. We're well known for inclusivity, for tolerance, for diversity, and of course, international students are very important to Canada, and the government has a number of different programs and incentives to encourage international students to come here and study. We are located in Toronto, and it is the fourth largest city in North America, it is a beautiful place. It's really growing. We're really seeing things rebound as COVID restrictions have been lifted. Lots of great things to do and see, lots of business and industry. So it's a wonderful place to be located. Here at Osgoode Hall Law School, we are the oldest and largest common law school in Canada, and we have the largest graduate program of any law school in Canada. So here at Osgoode, there are about 900 JD students. Those are the students doing the first law degree, which is equivalent to some of you may be more familiar with LLB terminology. We have about 100 research stream graduate students. So those are students sort of more on the academic career track doing research stream LLM and PhD studies. And then we have our programs at Osgoode PD, which are largely professional LLM students. And we have about 650 students in our programs. So we are a very large law school, but we are also part of the third largest university in Canada. So York University has a very large presence here in Toronto. Many things to do here on the York campus and many different services for students as well. So we have a great community for you here at Osgoode. We have faculty here from around the world, and many of our graduates have gone on to become professors at law schools around the world. So we do have a really great international profile here at Osgoode. So what is Osgoode professional development? So a lot of the time we get asked, well, you know, what's the difference? What's Osgoode Hall Law School and Osgoode professional development? Well, we're part of the law school. And the reason we were formed as kind of a subunit within the law school was to focus on continuing professional development. And we are quite unique, certainly within Canada, but even around the world for the size of our continuing professional development programs and the variety of programs that we offer. So we're here to focus on continuing education for lawyers, but also for people who aren't lawyers, but have contact with law in their work lives. And we've been around for about 25 years. Here at Osgoode Professional Development, we have 2 locations. We have a campus in downtown Toronto at Yonge and Dundas, and we also have an office on the Keele campus, which is the main campus of York University. And so the photos here that you're seeing on the screen, the one to the left is Yonge Dundas Square area downtown. The one on the right is the beautiful Osgoode building on the York University campus, and that's where I'm joining you from today. And, you know, along with being the largest graduate program, we have the largest variety, range, and size of programs in Canada for internationally trained lawyers and law graduates, and those are the programs I'm going to be talking to you about today. So these are photos of real students from past years. And again, we're really happy that this year we've gotten back to hosting programs in person and events as well. And those of you who might be interested in finding out more about our current students, we've got some blog posts up on our website about some of our recent alumni, as well as our entrance award winners for this year. And I'm going to be talking more about that as we go along in the presentation. Our students really fall into 3 groups. One group is Canadian lawyers who are usually doing part-time programs to further their knowledge. They want that idea of going back to school and really deepening their knowledge in their practice area. Another group is people who are not lawyers, but are professionals in other fields, possibly in health, in business, people who work in government, people who have significant legal knowledge. They haven't gone to law school before, but they want to bring that specialized legal knowledge related to their industry or profession and study law at a higher level. And again, those tend to be part-time students that we have in our programs. And then the folks you see represented on the screen are some of our full-time students, and those are typically internationally trained law graduates or lawyers who either have relocated to Canada and are going back to school, or are international or visa students studying with us. And the great thing about our programs is that all of these groups of students have opportunities to get to know each other and network, and that has benefits both for their learning experience, but also for helping them to achieve their professional goals in the program. So why would you choose Osgoode PD? Now, I've talked a little bit about what we do, but what sort of maybe contrasts us with other programs you might be looking for? Well, our size has allowed us to provide a lot of services to our students. And even though you might think of, for example, those of you who are looking at US schools, a lot of the American law schools are quite large, but often the programs they have for internationally trained lawyers are quite small and niche. By contrast, for us, we are a very big part of the Osgoode community. So we're able to benefit from the really fantastic quality of education here at Osgoode. Our Osgoode professors participate in our professional LLM offerings. We also bring in a lot of adjunct instructors who are practicing lawyers, judges, academics from other law schools around the world. So we bring together a mix of instructors who are able to really advance the goals of our students. And we have very high standards for our programs and courses. I've talked a lot about the size of our program, the size of our alumni pool. You're coming into a really great community here at Osgoode. You get to be part of our professional development center downtown, part of the Osgoode community here on campus, as well as the wider York community. And one of the things we also really focus on is helping students figure out how they want to connect with the broader legal or business community to help them achieve those professional goals. Thirdly, we have worked a lot over the last 10 years that I've been here at Osgoode PD in expanding the different kinds of support that we have available for students. So we do lots of different things, including having introductory courses for students when they start. We have a wellness counselor on our team. We provide academic counseling, co-curricular workshops, and different kinds of support. We also have a full range of career development support here in the program that students can take advantage of. And again, that varies from workshops and material and job postings that are available to all of our students, right down to one-on-one meetings for things like helping you prepare application packages, helping you prepare for interviews, and so on. So there is lots of resources available, but also a number of different things that are customized and that you can take advantage of to further your own particular goals. Okay, so now that I've talked about kind of the stage setting around Canada, Osgoode, who are we, what do we do? We're going to move now into the next part of the presentation where I'm going to be talking about program offerings. And as you might imagine from what I talked about earlier, this isn't everything we do at Osgoode PD. We do have other program options, but these are the programs that are typically of most interest to international students, to internationally trained lawyers and law graduates who want to come and spend some time with us. So I'm going to talk about non-credit programs, which would be primarily our summer programs, as well as our legal English programs. I'm going to talk about the full-time graduate diploma, and I'm going to talk about full-time graduate degrees, focusing on LLMs. I will, of course, always mention the research stream LLM, which is offered out of a different office here at Osgoode, but we're happy to introduce people if they are interested in the research LLM. And then I'm going to talk about the full-time offerings that we have within the professional LLM, which are international business law, Canadian common law, tax law, and general. So without further ado, let's move along and start talking about more of these in detail. I will, of course, recommend to you our website, osgoodepd.ca. So if there's something else you're interested in that you don't see here, perhaps you're looking to do a part-time program by distance, perhaps you're looking for a certificate program, there's lots more to look at, again, on the website at osgoodepd.ca. Okay, so let's start first by talking about summer programs. So let's say you're not maybe ready to study abroad for a long period of time. Maybe you're still in law school. You're looking for something short. You might want to come to Canada and combine sort of a tourist experience with some learning. And so what we do here are 3-week programs in the summer. What we're planning to offer in summer of 23, and these will likely take place in July. We're just at the point of finalizing our offerings over the next month. Canadian business law and language will be something that will be of interest to people primarily coming from civil law jurisdictions who are maybe looking for a bit of language proficiency specifically in the legal sphere, looking for some improvement in that area, some learning, as well as some learning about Canadian business law concepts from a comparative point of view. The instructor for that course is the director of our international business law program, who is a former in-house counsel who's worked in many different jurisdictions around the world. So a great person to learn from. We also run a program called Governance Through Law, which historically has been really of interest to people coming from other common law jurisdictions. Typically, there are 2 modules in that program. One focuses on rule of law issues that are current. Another would focus on another current topic of interest internationally. So we've done international finance in the past, and we've done international IP. So those are great sort of shorter experiences. You can come for 3 weeks. We do a lot of social events. We go to Niagara Falls and great stuff like that. And you also get your learning at the same time, and maybe that ignites an interest in coming back for a longer program at some point in the future. Next, I want to talk about Intensive Advanced Legal English. So this is a program that's unique in Canada. We designed it in partnership with the York University English Language Institute, which is an academic English institute that's here on the university campus. They are award-winning for the quality of their programs. They are really fantastic. And for those who are looking for more general language proficiency training, they run a number of different kinds of programs. I can't recommend them highly enough. But for people who are looking for that specific, Canadian legal language, little boost in the proficiency, perhaps if you're thinking about doing an LLM, but your proficiency level isn't quite high enough yet, or you want to make sure that you're translating your style and writing capability to the Canadian landscape. This is a really excellent program. We work with legal materials, but you're taught by a qualified English language instructor at ULE. And so this is a great option for those of you who are looking, again, for a shorter, potentially program, just focusing on writing, speaking, using that legal language, or something that might be preliminary to LLM study. Okay, moving into some of the longer offerings, we have now a graduate diploma in Foundations of Canadian Law. And for us, a graduate diploma is something that is half the length of a professional LLM program. Graduate diplomas take different forms, even within the York community. But for us, it's sort of 50% of that size of a professional LLM. So if you were coming to do this program full-time, it's a 2-term program. Right now, the full-time offering starts in the winter each year. So at this point, we wouldn't be looking to take more applications for winter of 2023 because for visa students, there wouldn't be enough lead time for you to get here. But if you're thinking ahead to future years, winter of 24, winter of 25, we will be starting these programs once each year. And it's a 2-term program, so it runs in winter and summer, so 8 months in duration. And this program has a slightly lower language proficiency requirement than a professional LLM. So it can be great for people, again, coming from potentially civil law jurisdictions or jurisdictions where English is not the exclusive language of instruction at your university, and perhaps your language proficiency score is a bit on the low side for starting a professional LLM. This can be a good precursor to that. It can also be a good option for those who perhaps had a bit of academic difficulty in law school. Perhaps your grades are not so strong. You're looking for something to give you a boost before going on to other graduate study. Or it can be a good standalone option if what you want is a really good foundation in Canadian legal concepts. So we cover Canadian public law, Canadian private law. We cover legal research and analysis, and we cover legal writing in a lot of depth in this program. And then students have some room at the end of the program to take some electives in areas that might interest them. So when we look at the professional LLM options in a few minutes, all of those specializations within the professional LLM would have some electives that would be available to graduate diploma students. So let's say you're interested in business law, perhaps you take a legal drafting course in the summer, or perhaps you take something on business associations in the summer. If you're interested in criminal law, for example, maybe you take evidence, or maybe you take a foundational Canadian criminal law course in the summer. So really good foundation in Canadian law and some ability to specialize. And again, this can be good as a precursor to an LLM or as a standalone program. It can also be particularly helpful. I'm going to be talking in a few minutes about the accreditation process for internationally trained lawyers. And this graduate diploma can be a good option for people who are looking at going through that accreditation process and want a really strong foundation before they do that. So I talked about timing. Again, we start the full-time version of this diploma in winter. It's 2 terms, 12 credits of required courses and 6 credits of electives. And the required courses are really in those important core areas of skill and knowledge that you need to feel confident that you understand those underpinnings of Canadian common law. Okay, we'll talk next about our professional LLM full-time offerings. And we have 4 specializations currently that have full-time options. The remaining specializations we have are part-time only. And so again, people who might be in a similar time zone to us and looking at doing a program by distance, the part-time options, I would certainly recommend that you take a look at. But many of our international students do want to come and study in Canada, really re-immerse themselves in a full-time program. So these are the options that are available to you, and I'm going to be talking more about each one. So how does the professional LLM work? Typically, we have 3 credit and 6 credit courses. We do have 1 9-credit course so far, but no others. So for the most part, what you're doing as a full-time professional LLM student, you're going to be completing 36 credits. You will be taking 1 or 2 courses, typically at a time, within your program. So 12 credits per term over 3 terms consecutive. And we run all year here at Osgoode PD. And so typically, if you think about completing the program, it would be within 1 calendar year. Now, there are options to take leaves of absence or extend your completion time if that's needed. But most of our visa students, they come, they start the program, and they finish up within 1 calendar year. So starting with international business law, this was the first full-time program that we offered. So we've had it in existence for quite some time. It's tried, tested, and true. It covers Canadian and comparative private law. We have lots of different elective courses within this program: business transactions, cross-border tax, international arbitration, international trade, international finance. Really practical and interesting program for people who have some exposure to business law in their past profile and are perhaps looking to work in international or cross-border business law here in Canada or elsewhere. This program, we take new students every fall and every winter. And again, there's lots of choice of electives. We've just made some changes to degree requirements that will take effect for future intakes. So in the first term of the program, students are typically going to take legal research and writing along with our comparative private law course. And then they will be taking about 18 credits minimum of electives, but most will take more than that. Again, when I talk about accreditation in a few minutes, all of these specializations also have some room for you to take courses toward accreditation to practice here in Canada. So if that's a goal, there's some room to further that goal as well. The professional LLM in Canadian common law is the one that is really devoted to accreditation to practice here in Canada. Again, we take new students every fall and every winter. It's worth noting that as with our other specializations, there is a part-time option in Canadian common law, and the part-time option gives you access to online courses. So this is a program where if you wanted to go through accreditation and do that by distance, the part-time option is worth looking at. Otherwise, for full-time, coming here to Canada, start in fall or winter. The main focus of this program is accreditation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about accreditation now, just in case people are unfamiliar with it, because I know some of our international candidates have done lots of research about this. Others of you, it may be the first time you're hearing about it. And again, thinking about the fact that some of you have looked at US schools, our process for becoming accredited to practice here in Canada is quite different. So there's a body called the National Committee on Accreditation, and that body assesses the credentials of any internationally trained lawyer who wants to practice law here in Canada in any of the common law provinces. So any province except Quebec. If you're looking to live and work in Quebec, that would be the Barreau du Québec. It's a very different process. But any of the other jurisdictions here in Canada, National Committee on Accreditation, NCA, is the body you would apply to get an assessment of your credentials. And what that process looks like depends largely on what jurisdiction you're coming from, whether it's a civil law or common law jurisdiction, and how you went to law school previously. So did you go to law school in person? What was the length of your law school? Did you attend university for a previous degree before law school, and so on? And there are a number of different profiles that can come out of that combination of circumstances. But essentially what we've done with the professional LLM in Canadian common law is we've developed graduate level courses that are accredited by the NCA to help you knock off, in many cases, all of your NCA requirements. In other cases, the majority. Again, it depends on what your accreditation profile looks like. And we offer, again, graduate level courses that are equivalent to all of those possible required subjects that the NCA might need you to do as part of your accreditation process. One thing that certainly distinguishes us from many other programs in Canada and also in the US, is in the professional LLM, we don't use JD or undergraduate courses. So all of the courses you take with us would be with other internationally trained lawyers, most of whom have professional experience from other places. And so the courses really are pitched at the graduate level. They are designed to provide opportunity for some comparative discussion while you learn those foundational Canadian concepts. Next is the LLM in tax law. And for those of you who are passionate about tax, I'm sorry to tell you we will not be taking new students into this program next fall of 23. We're taking a break because we're undergoing a cyclical review process, and we're taking a look at our curriculum in full-time LLM. So we wanted to take a break in order to make sure we can have the time to focus on that. So we are anticipating at this point we'll resume this program in fall of 2024. And again, this is a long-standing program. We also have a part-time version, and we look at Canadian tax law. The focus of the program, or sort of the core of the offerings, are in corporate and international tax, but there are also electives in other fields of tax. And we use academics as well as practitioners to teach in this program, and it's quite popular. Okay, final specialization I want to talk about is general. And general is really an opportunity to sort of customize your own LLM plan of study. So if you're someone who says, you know, I don't want to focus just on one specialization, perhaps, for example, you are someone who is a public sector lawyer and you want to combine administrative law and constitutional law. You don't want to take mostly one, you want to take a real mix of both. General would be an option you could take, and you could say, I want to take my courses from the administrative law specialization and the constitutional law specialization. So when I was mentioning earlier that we have all of these part-time professional LLM specializations, you'll see that list here. So many of these programs don't have a full-time option in and of themselves, but they can be combined to create a full-time option within general. And so if you're looking at general seriously, first of all, I definitely recommend that you get in touch with us, and perhaps we do a bit of advising with you before you finalize an application. I'm going to be giving everyone some contact information at the end of the session that you can use to get in touch with us, because we want to make sure that we're designing something that makes sense for you. You do need to identify 2 or 3 specializations that you're going to take your courses from. And in your application to the professional LLM in general full-time, you need to specify that you have knowledge and or professional experience in each of the specializations you're declaring. And there's more information on our website about which specializations can be chosen for particular years. So, you know, this is an option that we have a small number of new students take each year, and works really well if you do have that background and want to combine 2 or 3 different specializations. Okay, I introduced you a few minutes ago to the NCA. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those requirements now, because I know often international students are thinking about longer term, potentially staying in Canada or wanting to get accredited and have that credential when they move on to a different jurisdiction. We have drop-in sessions really frequently, so you can ask more questions about this. So I certainly recommend that you drop in and ask us questions on our website, osgoodepd.ca. Also on the lower right-hand side of my slide, I've got the website for the NCA itself, nca.legal. They have an assessment tool on their website that will help you try to get a sense for what your NCA assessment might look like. But I'm going to take you through some of the main profiles right now. Okay, so the NCA, I mentioned, they assess the credentials of all internationally trained lawyers and law graduates who want to become accredited to practice here in Canada. So it doesn't matter where you're from or how much experience you have. That is the first stop on your journey. And absolutely everyone has a requirement to demonstrate subject matter competency in 5 subjects. So those are what we call the 5 Canadians, the ones that are up there under mandatory, as well as legal research and writing. So minimum, you're going to have 6 requirements. They also look at whether you have competency in contracts, torts, and property. And typically, if you've done those subjects in a common law jurisdiction, you don't have to do them again as part of your NCA process. They'll give you credit. So if you went to law school in the UK, in Australia, in Nigeria, other common law jurisdictions, usually you don't have to do those subjects again. There are exceptions though. And then there are additional subjects that sometimes get imposed based on having perhaps a shorter law degree. So if your law degree was 2 years, if you did a direct entry 3-year law degree without an undergrad before that, if you perhaps have lower academic performance in your law degree program, if your credentials are stale, so you haven't studied or worked in law in many years, you might get additional subject requirements. So that's one element of the assessment process, is looking at what subjects you need to demonstrate competency in. Now, the other question is how you demonstrate competency. So some candidates do have to take courses at a Canadian law school. Other candidates are able to write challenge exams with the NCA or take courses at their option. And in general, the distinction is civil law, common law, and in-person or distance legal education. So if you've gone to law school in a common law jurisdiction in person, you typically can do challenge exams if that's the way you want to go. If you have gone to law school in a civil law jurisdiction, again, in person, you typically have to do at least a number of these subjects at a law school in Canada, usually at least 4, before you can be allowed to write challenge exams. If you've done a distance education or online law degree, typically you have to go to school again in Canada. So that's kind of a rough way of categorizing how this process works. And again, if you want more detail about the NCA process, we have information on our website, and we're happy to have people at the drop-in sessions. I'm also happy to answer some questions if we have time in our Q&A period. So certainly thinking about whether accreditation is a top priority for you when you come to do a program in Canada, how you sort of layer that into whatever plan of study you might want to have is going to depend from one person to another. So looking at that, let's say you do want to go through accreditation, you've applied, you've got your assessment report from the NCA. On the right-hand side here of the chart, you'll see within the full-time programs how many NCA subjects you can typically take within a program. Now, I will say all of our programs will help with in-person study requirements. So again, if you've got a distance education law degree or an online law degree. For your first law degree, you will have some in-person study requirements. Any program with us will help with that if you're coming and studying in person. Here, where the difference is really looking at how many of the specific subjects that the NCA may require that you need to take or that you have the ability to take within each program. And obviously, Canadian common law is the one that offers the most space to take those specific subjects that may be required. But all programs are going to have at least some elective space for you to be able to take those requirements. Now here, you know, as I've been talking about this, those of you who've also been looking at the US are thinking, oh my gosh, this is a really different system from the US. Absolutely it is, because in many states in the United States, to simplify it, going through an LLM does give you a route to writing the bar exams. Here in Canada, again, at least in every jurisdiction other than Quebec, the first step is completing these NCA requirements. You then are able to enter the licensing process with any of the law societies and meet those requirements. So for example, in Ontario here, we have both experiential training as well as bar exams that you write, but that comes after completing these NCA requirements. And of course, one of the things we do in terms of supporting our students, because we have such a large population of internationally trained lawyers in our programs who are going through this accreditation process, is really shepherd you through how the process works and helping you look ahead to the licensing process as the second step. So here's where things maybe get a little bit complicated in terms of making your decision. Again, we take really seriously our knowledge in these areas, our ability to help candidates. We want to make sure you come into the right program. So we definitely recommend that you attend information sessions that we run, attend our drop-in Q&As, get some advising if you need it before you complete your application. But, you know, looking at your goals, your timeline, what kind of experience you have from your past education and work history, what you want to do in the future and what's going to bring you the most value. So, you know, typical conversation I might have with someone is, if you are a tax lawyer and you want to do tax, even if accreditation is something you want to do, you're probably better to do the tax LLM rather than Canadian common law, because it's going to give you that subject matter expertise, as well as networking with people in that field. Whereas, you know, for some other candidates, Canadian common law might be the best option. So we really recommend thinking through where you want to go, what's going to give you the most value in terms of program options. Okay, we're moving into the specifics now. So thinking about the money part of things for international students, our program is billed as a program fee. So it's an overall fee. The professional LLM is around $45,000 Canadian. The graduate diploma about 18,000 Canadian. And I know that Gareth was sharing with me that there was a question about, you know, who counts as an international student in terms of paying international fees. It's anyone who doesn't have permanent status in Canada. So if you would be coming to study on a study permit, then you are considered an international student. Once you have permanent residence, if you have protected person status as a convention refugee, once you become a Canadian citizen, then you are a domestic student. But those who are coming on visas are international. Certainly, What that means in terms of cost is, because it's more expensive, we know, for international students to come, although I would say our fees are quite competitive as compared with other options in Canada, and certainly as compared with the US. We do have entrance awards that visa students can apply for. There is an early deadline. So please, if you want to be considered, make sure that you get your application in early. All of those deadlines are posted on our site. We have two categories of awards. We have $10,000 awards and $30,000 awards. And the differences are for eligibility have to do with how much work experience you have coming into the program. And we give out 3 of the Excellence Awards and 6 of the Merit Awards in fall, and then the same number again in winter. So there are a number of these awards up for the taking. I know that we often get questions about how else, what other funding options are available? Well, given that we're a professional LLM, it's not a funded program in the same way that a research program would be funded. So, for example, looking at the research stream LLM, which is a very different program where you don't take as many courses and you're really focused on longer term research, those programs are typically funded, as well as coming with TA or other work experience. Our programs, students do need to largely self-fund. We do have these awards available, but otherwise students are either funding with their own resources or they're looking to other outside sources. We do work with organizations that look at funding for students like Empower, but a lot of our students are using savings from work or are looking at loans from third parties. Okay, if you're thinking that this is looking good, I might be thinking about applying, well, you want to plan in advance. So looking at the dates that are important, required documents that we need for applications, as well as working with an agent. So right now, we're just starting to take applications for fall 2023. Applications just opened on the 1st. So if you're thinking about next fall, you've got lots of time. That award application deadline is in mid-January. So you've got, let's see, November, December, January, about 3 months to get in your application along with your award application if you were looking at fall 23. All of the required documents that we need, as well as what we're looking for, is covered on our website. Again, we're happy to have you at drop-in Q&As or other information sessions. If you want more information about what we're looking for, it's important to know that what we list as required documents aren't negotiable. So we definitely need transcripts. For many of you, we will need language proficiency tests as well. So those things can take a bit of time to get ready. And typically we are looking for candidates, if you are a law graduate, minimum, typically as a rule of thumb, 2 years or so of law-related work experience. So we're not necessarily looking at fresh graduates for most of our programs. Summer programs and graduate diploma, yes. Professional LLM, we are certainly looking for candidates who've got some work experience. We do also have agents who are authorized to help candidates apply. We list those on our website, but we have agents in China, in Nigeria, India, Pakistan, in Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as some other jurisdictions as well. So if you're looking for someone to help give you advice, who will really take on the burden of making sure that you put in a complete and persuasive application, we certainly recommend taking a look at our agents. That's not something that will cost you anything. Those are free services to you because the agents are remunerated by us if your application is successful. So I mentioned for fall 23, here are some other forward-looking dates. So for fall 23, applications are open now. The awards deadline is January 15th. That means your LLM application along with your awards application have to be complete by that date. Final deadline, if you're not worried about entrance awards, would be May. So you can apply after January 15th. I do not recommend it though, both because you may want to be considered for the awards, but also we try to make most of our offers of admission for visa students by the end of February. And that's to give you time to get here because the visa processing timelines can be long. So we definitely recommend applying early if you are a visa candidate. And then winter 24 is going to come up before too long. So if you were thinking fall's maybe too soon, for winter, we'll be opening applications next February. What are we looking for? Again, I mentioned professional experience. So we ask for a resume, a writing sample. That can be something from law school. It can be a professional sample. We are looking to see your writing and analytical ability. We look for transcripts. The more recent your transcripts are, the more important the grades are. Don't worry, we do our own assessment. We know that some jurisdictions are not as generous in terms of grading, so I wouldn't worry too much about grades. However, if you have particularly low grades, so something that might look like below a C average, we do encourage that you try to give us some context for that in your application. We need 2 references. They can be professional, they can be academic. We're looking for them to comment on your legal knowledge, your legal ability, your writing and communication ability, the likelihood that you would complete the program, etc. At least some of those things. And again, many of you will require language tests. The criteria for that are on the website, and we're, of course, happy to answer one-on-one questions. So I want to stop now to make sure that we have some time for Q&A. Certainly, if there's a question you'd prefer to ask individually, or we don't get to your question today, please email us at recruitment. We are pretty good at getting back to people within 2 business days, sometimes sooner, depends how busy we are. We will have a closure coming up over the winter holidays. So we tend to close around December 20th, and then we're off for about 10 days. So just thinking ahead, it's great if you're thinking about fall 23, if you try to get in touch with us before that holiday break so that you're well placed to get your applications in early. And we're happy to set up an advising appointment by Zoom or by phone. But again, the best first way of contacting us is by email. So Gareth, I'll let you
Thank you, Meghan.
wrangle the questions.
Very insightful. It was a little bit longer than anticipated. I wanted you to finish it because very rarely do we have a webinar session where there is that much detail about the academic side of things, which is fantastic. But quite often they focus on where they're based and how far away they are from the key places, which we'll touch upon in a second. But it was great to watch that, so thank you. At this stage, I'd like to say a huge welcome to all our podcast listeners across Apple Music, Spotify, and TuneIn. And for those of you watching today on social media, thank you for your questions. We have Osgoode Law School with us today. Now we've got Meghan. Now, Meghan, one of the questions I want to elaborate further on is around, what's the difference between studying in Canada to the USA? Now, part of it you've mentioned in the webinar about the JDs and you've got various different abilities of law studies, but talk to me a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, it depends on what factors people are looking at. Certainly the US has a lot more populated centers than we do here in Canada, and a lot more climatic difference than we do in Canada. Yes. So, if you're coming to Canada, you need to be ready for the wonders of winter if that's not something that you're used to. So certainly thinking about being here versus being in Florida or California, that's going to be a different lifestyle. I think so Canada, people tell me different things, people who've lived in the US. We have a reputation for being quite polite and friendly. We have a reputation for it being a clean place. Toronto's quite a large city, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a big city in the way that some of the large cities in the
Safe
US
as well.
feel like.
Safe is probably
quite safe. So certainly crime statistics are really favorable here, here in Canada. Certainly lots of options. We can't give immigration advice at the program. We do have a department at York called York International that has qualified immigration consultants. So they support students who want to stay in the country longer. We have in Canada lots of policy options from the government in terms of postgraduate work permits. There are quite a number of different routes for students to apply for permanent residence after having completed a program here. So I think from an immigration perspective, there's a lot of incentives. It's seen as a favorable place to be if you're looking to relocate for a longer period of time, whereas I understand that can be a bit trickier in the US, where you often will get a work permit, but it's for a defined period of time, and then you kind of run out of runway after a period of time. Whereas with us, a lot of our students have stayed. When I think back for the 10 years I've been here, a lot of our students are now permanent residents or citizens and have really reestablished themselves here. I think, in terms of what's unique for us is, I think it's really important for people applying to do an LLM. It's a big time commitment. It costs a lot of money. So you should make sure that wherever you're going is going to give you the experience that you want. One thing that's really different about us as compared with a lot of the US schools that I'm familiar with is the LLM programs that they have for international students. They tend to be quite small and quite limiting in terms of what you're studying in the program. And often you're going to be put in JD classes with undergraduate students in those programs. And that can be great if that's what you're looking for. But
Excellent.
We have a really big program that's all designed at the graduate level. And so all of your classmates will be experienced professionals. And that's quite a different experience from sort of the going back to law school and being in the JD environment. That's what a lot of the US schools provide. And again, some people are looking for that because they want to do clinics, they want to do mooting, they want to do student life. Our program is much more geared to people who are using the program to reach a professional goal and to network with other professionals.
And can I talk about the culture as well? Because, you've spoken about the academic side of things there, which is fantastic. Obviously, being in Toronto, I say in Toronto, you are in theory part of Toronto. Are there a lot of international students there? Sometimes, you're Osgoode, yes, you're York, we know that, but people will look at that and go, where are you based? What's the city like? What's it like to live there? I know myself, it's cosmopolitan, it's crazy city, it's a great city, but talk to me more from an international student's perspective about what they can expect, if there's loads of different cultures there, and how easy it is to fit in.
Sure, yeah. So over 50% of the population of Toronto was born outside Canada. So I am a minority in Toronto, being somebody who, all of my grandparents were born in Canada. So, Toronto is very much a city of lots of people who are newcomers or have come, within the last 10 to 20 years. So, and honestly, when you walk down the street in Toronto, there are people from everywhere and you hear all different languages being spoken. We have restaurants and festivals and events from lots of different cultures and communities. And so really, Actually, a few years ago in the Toronto Star, which is one of the main newspapers here, there was a photographer who did a feature on, he wanted to get a photograph of someone from every country around the world who lives in Toronto, and he did it. So there literally are people from everywhere here. And so, again, I think what's great about that is there's a level of comfort because anyone who's new here will be able to find something familiar, whether it's food, whether it's language, whether it's some kind of cultural celebration that they want to participate in, but also lots of opportunity for difference. And I'm a big believer in seeking out people who are different from yourself to look for the benefits that you might take from that. And we really have that as a microcosm in our program as well. We have a really diverse program. So certainly there are countries where we have a strong history of having students from, members of sort of the common law tradition. So we get lots of students from Nigeria, India, Pakistan, but we also have lots of smaller pockets of students from all around the world. So it is a really nice, diverse experience.
Excellent. And I want to wrap up on a couple of questions. Firstly, you mentioned in your presentation about, I think if you're interested in tax law, myself, I'm not. I don't know anyone that would be, but there are people that are interested in tax law. Obviously, you're taking a break for a year to reassess the curriculum and everything behind it, which is fantastic. But talk to me about the differences between studying or starting a course in the winter and starting a course in September. Does it make a difference? And if so, what are those differences?
Right. Yeah, really good question. Yeah, we introduced the winter start about 6 years ago because we found that really it was for very practical reasons that a lot of our visa students were not getting their visas in time for an August start date, which is when our fall programs start. And so we needed to create a bit of flexibility to say, okay, if you aren't ready yet, just come in January instead. So that's been quite successful and has allowed us to grow the programs quite a bit. There's a few differences. I mean, one is if you're coming from a warm climate, it might feel like quite a shock to get here in January. January is the coldest month here, and it's often quite snowy. So I guess that has some knock-on effects in the sense that it can be a bit more challenging to integrate yourself into the Toronto community. There aren't as many, in August, it's a great time to get here. There are a lot of festivals still. The weather's nice. You can get out, you can explore, you can see things. And so we always recommend, all else being equal, if you're a visa student, it's way better to get here for the fall start. We also are able to ease students in a little bit more. So we run some introductory courses during August and then start a lot of the other courses in late August, early September. In January, we sort of reopen when after the winter holiday break, and we have to get started with the courses on a much faster pace. So it's a little bit more intense. And it's also, again, if you're feeling the culture shock and the weather shock, it can be a little bit more difficult to start doing enjoyable things when you get here in January. It just means that there might be a bit of delayed gratification because, the nice weather will come in April, May, and then you get to do those fun things outside.
Some people will be more used to the weather than you think, trust me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, depending on where folks are coming from. And we do still run plenty of social events during the winter to try to make sure people have things to do.
Excellent. And Meghan, thanks for your time. We're going to have to wrap things up because we've gone over the hour mark now. So there have been other questions that have come in, which we'll forward on to yourself and to Elisa.
Great.
So, but a huge thank you for taking part at the last second, may I add. So,
no problem. My pleasure.
But for now, for the rest of the viewers and people watching on social media, if you are interested in one of our 15 £500 bursaries, please head over to our website. Anyone can apply for it. Anyone that's studying any course around the globe, whether it be an LLM, any other law course, it could be a JD within the USA. Please head over to our website and you can apply for that bursary. But for now, a huge thank you to everybody at Osgoode for making this happen. Like we mentioned at the beginning, this has been our first Study in Canada session as well. So I'm hoping it'll be a really interesting one. Viewers will be intrigued by all the information you've seen, and hopefully we can do many more of these in the future. But for now, a huge thank you. A huge thank you to Meghan and everyone behind the scenes at Osgoode. Take care. Thank you and bye-bye.
Great. Thanks, Gareth. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you.